Welcome to South Shore Piano, the official podcast of the South Shore Piano School. I'm your host, Jonathan Roberts, and on this podcast we talk with students, parents, teachers, and other leaders in the arts to find out exactly how music education and the arts are changing lives every day. My guest today is the one and only Rob Flax, based right here in Boston. Rob is a multi-instrumentalist, composer, and educator, one of the most astounding creatives I have ever met. Rob can basically create stuff out of anything. Back when the pandemic first began, our second month in, April of 2020, we decided to have a little contest on our second virtual recital. It was a YouTube recital. The contest was which student could come up with the most creative excuse for not practicing during quarantine. The prize, which the students didn't know at the time, was that we were going to take the winning idea, give it to Rob, and have him create a song out of it. The winner was "My Piano Was Trying to Bite Me" because of the agonies of social distancing. And here's a little snippet of what Rob came up with for that.
My piano is trying to bite me. It actively fends off my touch. Perhaps it is sending a message to me that I'm trying to practice too much. It's acting a little bit edgy. The lid will come down with a crack. But all that I'm doing is helping with chewing. I'm trying to scrape off the plaque. Imagine the keys being clean again, those ivories pearly white. But now when I try to approach it, my piano reacts with a bite. A bite? That's right.
Rob, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here virtually, but here, it's good to be here.
Totally, and it's so awesome seeing I've decided to call this your creativity layer. That's so awesome. Your keyboard, your chess set, your instruments, very cool stuff. So Rob, I consider you creativity incarnate, creativity personified. I tell my students about you all the time, but mere words don't do it justice. It's another thing to experience it. So I'd love to start with a little demo.
Oh,
Talked about this beforehand, but for our listeners out there, I have a random word generator pulled up. So Rob, I'd love to give you just 3 random words that are truly random. I'm going to click this button that says generate random words.
Oh my gosh.
And you can just improv and riff on that.
Let's try it. I'm writing them down because it is early in the morning.
Yes, it is 8 a.m. here in Boston. We have gone there. All right. So the 3 random words are drink, clothes, and planet.
Wow. Drink, clothes, and planet. Okay. Well, let's see what we can do here. I'm going to go over here. And pull up my looper pedal board setup. Can you see this in the shot?
Yes.
I don't know if the podcast will have the visual anyway, but...
Yep, this will go on YouTube, so they'll be able to see this. And I'll have to ask you how you did this after. That is so cool.
Creativity layer. It's all here.
Yeah, seriously.
Drink, clothes, and planet. Okay. Let's see here. Well, I woke up this morning, I didn't know what to think. I poured some cup of coffee to have myself a drink. I did it in my bathrobe before I put on my clothes. And then I headed to outer space, 'cause you never know where you're gonna go, yeah. Where you gonna go? Could be to Mercury or Jupiter or Mars. A little bit of caffeination and you'll find yourself among the stars. You don't need to wear much, perhaps a suit for outer space. It's not like a tuxedo. Yes, that look would be out of place. You need like an astronaut suit. How about a shreddy rock solo now? All right, there it is. My very short, song about drink, clothes, and planets.
Wow. That's going to be stuck in my head all day. That was awesome. As I always say when I witness the amazing Rob Flax. So it might be hard to describe, but I have to ask. I've been wanting to ask you for a while, actually.
Okay.
What happens in your head with these things? I have this image of something like The Matrix, or a scene from a beautiful mind, where like time stands still and it's like a swirling, and like the rest of the world is moving really slow, and then you just pop out with this awesomeness. But to the best of your ability, because I know it probably just flows to an extent. So like you're presented with 3 words, like what happens?
Well, yeah, that is a bit of a challenge. There's a thing that I forget who coined this term, but it's a term that I like called expert-induced amnesia, which is a good way of saying somebody who's done something for so long is not necessarily good at describing how they do it. If you ask Rafael Nadal how he hits the tennis ball, it might be strategic about why he wanted to aim left, but not the physical mechanics of which wrist move was doing it. But, I'm an artist and a teacher, so I try and break it down. What I just did there was a little looper thing, and part of my live shows for the last several years has been Insta songs, where I write a song on the fly. I'm using a pedal called the Boomerang Looper, and let me pull that up here. There's my pedal cam. It's actually, yeah, that one. I can just pull it up directly. A little out of frame, but that's my Boomerang, and it allows me to record myself and then play it back. And it has 3 different buttons. I've actually taught an entire looping masterclass. If people want to find out about the looping techniques that I use, I co-taught it with my friend Andy Reiner. You can find out more at loopmethod.com. You can get replays of the entire 2-week course.
Oh, sweet. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah. So I'm using the Boomerang as a tool for arranging on the fly. So I build up a band from scratch, sort of one layer at a time. First, a short percussive loop to kind of set a tempo. That tempo is kind of based on a mood or a feeling that I get. Maybe it's something from the words that spark something. So drink and clothes are both sort of these short little words that if I'm saying them out loud, drink, clothes, they don't quite have a rhythm, but it gave me about this tempo. It might be that it would be faster if I were 2 more cups in. But that tempo seemed right. Then the next thing that I did was I laid down a bass line. So this in the upper, way over here, you can barely see it. There's my subterranean bass pedal. It turns my violin into sort of this evil synth bass. And once I start playing that, it's sort of let's pick a chord progression and run with it. Oops, there's the pedal cam. Close-up view of what I was using there. The U235 sub-octave generator. This is serial number 1 of I don't know how many he's made now, but it's a small builder. I heard it and fell in love with it, and that's my go-to bass thump sound on my main studio board here. So I've got a groove. I lay down a bass line. The bass line creates a chord progression, and as I'm layering the harmony, I'm sort of plucking some chords like a guitar or a keyboard player might add some pads. I used a delay pedal. My favorite delay pedal is the Chase Bliss Therme. This is a magical device that absolutely transforms everything I put through it into magic. So it gave the right murky background color. And now I have groove, bass line, chords, and I can bring things in and out by turning on and turning off the boomerang as an arranging trick live. And so then I sort of need to create a verse and a chorus. The verse comes out of what these lyrics are. Drink is the first word, and at this hour, this is the only drink I can think about. It's coffee.
Right.
It's usually the only drink I think about. Maybe water, also very good. But then to try and spin it out from there, you just follow a chain of logical events. Drink and clothes. Okay. Well, I started with woke up this morning. Well, I put on my clothes. So then the next bit planet is a little bit of a reach.
Right. No pun intended or pun intended.
Because there's so much of a discontinuity between the mundane breakfast time activities of wake up, drink coffee, put on clothes. This is something I do every day. Travel to another planet becomes the interesting bit around which the narrative develops. So anything that's out of place is now an opportunity to tell you where the story's going to go. This is improvisational skills of make a choice and respond to what happens. So the choice here is this weird non sequitur word of planet. Okay, well now I need to somehow go into outer space. Okay, let's go into outer space. That's about it.
That's awesome.
What happened.
We'll dig into this in a bit, but is that something that you feel like you were just sort of born with and can just sort of have always been able to do, or did you have to actually practice that?
Sorry, I don't mean to. Of course I had to practice that.
I know, I was teeing that up. That's
just give me a softball swish. Yeah, of course one does not come fully formed into the world with that ability. There's at least 20 years of work that have gone into giving me the ability to do that. I've been playing violin since I was 8, and the ability to play the violin and do all those things comes from years of playing jazz and improvising, and I'm sure I've played that chord progression before. I might have even played bits of that melody before. I definitely have played that groove before. I've used all of those pedals before, and this setup I've been using in this space for months now, so I'm very dialed in with how to quickly access the sounds that I need. I've been using that looper since 2016, and before that another looper, so I've been looping for over 5 years. I've been freestyle rapping since middle school. Like back in middle and high school, I used to get into rap battles in the lunchroom and on the back of the bus going to chess tournaments. There's always been. There was a time when I actually wanted to teach a course on freestyle rapping at the after-school YMCA program. I was a pedagogue in middle school.
That is awesome. Do kids still do freestyle rapping, or has that gone the way?
You're asking the wrong guy. I am not a kid these days, so I could not tell you. I'm gonna say yes, probably. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, this podcast episode might bring it back.
Yeah.
You never know.
There's a really fun game if you want to practice your freestyle rapping called the Beastie Boys game. And most people listening to this don't know who the Beastie Boys are. But the Beastie Boys were a group of rappers who had this particular style of, at the end of every line, all of the crew would join in and say the last word in unison. So you could play a game like this, right? Let me give myself a little beat. Let's see here. Yo, my name is Rob, and I'm here to say. And then you have to rhyme something to say. I know that horses like to eat hay. And the sun beams down with the bright little ray. You get the idea? If you're not good at first, well, that's
okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I did it right. All right, cool.
If you have friends that you can do this with, you can try it out in real time. And initially you might miss. And the idea is to try and, if you're the one coming up with the line, you have to think of a lyric that ends in a rhyming word.
Right.
And then you have to deliver it in a way that leads the rest of the audience listening who has never heard this thing that you made up figure out the word. But you got okay, right? And I
Right.
could do other words that kind of rhyme with that. And so you just practice coming up with rhymes and then practice creating setups for those rhymes. So what you haven't seen behind the scenes is a decade plus of doing that and writing song lyrics and working on rhyming in a popular music forums and studying songs and learning jazz standards and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, so cool. I love to hear more of the backstory. So take me back to young Rob, 8 years old.
Ah,
Was
yes,
violin your first instrument?
yes, young Rob.
Yeah.
Yes,
The origin story.
that's
So yeah,
right.
tell me a bit about your beginnings, because again, I think when folks see sort of a fully formed artist, there's a sort of romanticizing, like he was just born being able to do this.
He's
But
so talented. Yeah, how did you? Oh, you just such a gift you have. How did you just use your talent? I started playing violin by accident.
oh, okay.
It was public school, third grade. They had an orchestra and band show and tell assembly, and the assembly had all the instruments. You got to hear how people sound on the stringed instruments and then all the woodwinds and the brass, and they played all these instruments. And I thought, hey, wow, that I really like the sound of that clarinet. But you couldn't be in the band until fourth grade. You could be
Ah,
in the orchestra in third grade. So I thought, well, I really want to play clarinet. I mean, I know everybody plays clarinet to get to the saxophone because they made a special announcement to say you can't play saxophone until fifth grade. You have to do fourth grade clarinet first. And I was like, okay, but clarinet sounds pretty good. But I'll just do a string for a year and then switch over. And I thought viola sounded really nice. I liked
oh.
how mellow it was. But my mom said, I have a violin in the basement from when I was in middle school, and maybe you should start on that since we already have that. Um, and she's not a trained musician by any stretch. She again had school orchestra program. It got disbanded when she was, I think, in high school. Their school redistricted or something, and so she never developed into a full time musician of any kind. And you know, so it's not like I have an innately musical family. I'm not born into the guild. It was pure dumb luck. And the next series of fortunate events was my parents did support private lessons for me. I started taking lessons with Julian Aaron, who was the concert master of the Evanston Symphony Orchestra. I'm from Evanston, Illinois. And so Mr. A was great and very patient. I was not a great student. There were many lessons where I showed up underprepared, having not practiced. I had a pretty good ear, so I could hear what it was supposed to sound like and then fudge it. But of course, that completely defeats the purpose of technique etudes and studies, where even once you know how it's supposed to sound, the goal is to play it over and over again so your fingers get better at stuff. I
Right.
didn't understand that at that age. I was just, oh, I know how this goes, and would not quite nail it. And got decent at sight reading just because I procrastinated and never practiced. Um, the big game changer, though, was Jim Janessi. So Miss Rand was my first orchestra director. And then in middle school, we got a new orchestra teacher. His name was Mr. Janessi. And he asked if anybody wanted to have uh, lessons in jazz and blues, because he's got this book called Jazz Philharmonic. So Randy Sabine and Bob Phillips, two great educators and string players, had written this book for teaching jazz and blues to uh, orchestra students. And I said, sure, I would love to take additional jazz lessons. And this was so freeing. The idea that you could make up whatever melody you wanted, that you could play in fact, you were supposed to play the opening melody, but then there was a part in the middle where you just did whatever you want and then play the melody again at the end. And that was very exciting. I've also forever been a twitchy, fidgety person, so always tapping on the desk and getting in trouble for not sitting still. And it turns out that's actually just I'm a drummer. I'm a
Ah,
percussionist at heart. And so everything I do is based around rhythm. So again, jazz was a perfect synthesis of my harmonic and melodic stuff that I was working on violin with the twitchy, tappy, always foot moving, dancey, twitchy McGee.
yeah. So it sounds like it was a series of some happy coincidences and some opportunities given from teachers, and especially in the jazz alternative style
That's right.
genre. Did you have any idea at that point you were going to end up being a career musician?
Not a clue. It was just a thing that I enjoyed that I kept doing. There was a time in my life where I had as a sort of inner, sort of not quite mantra, but way of being of keep your options open and keep going. And so that was I was always involved in a lot of extracurricular things. I was playing chess. I was playing soccer. I was in the school orchestra. I was on the math team in high school. Things that were interesting and fun for me. Um, and they all ended up sort of staying part of the process in some way or another, just to varying degrees. Like, no pun intended, I did end up getting a math degree in undergrad as well as a violin performance degree. So for undergrad, I went to a liberal arts college on partial scholarship because of my violin playing. But I was going for a math degree because I thought that was definitely the thing that I was going to do. But in 2009, I auditioned for a contest that the American String Teachers Association put on, ASTA, and they awarded me Best Improvisation for the Alternative Styles Awards. They since have stopped calling it Alternative Styles. It's now Eclectic Styles, because alternative implies that there's definitely one dominant best path that you have to do, and it's definitely Western European classical music. That's the right default. So that's a little pejorative and condescending, maybe. So they've changed it to Eclectic Styles.
Gotcha. I'll make sure that's the last time I use alternative style.
Well, it also means that since my year was the last year they held the Alternative Styles Awards, I remain the undefeated champion of the world.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case.
So, it's I think I'm an alternative to something.
Yeah, no, I would I would say so. And chess continues to be a part of your mental process.
Yes.
I'd love to hear more about that. That's
So
interesting.
before there was music, there was chess. I started playing when I was in kindergarten. My parents showed me how to move the pieces. It was one of many things. But in first grade, my elementary school got a chess program, and the coach of this club was named Tom Doan, who coincidentally was a relatively strong player. He's maybe 1700 rated player who was also a tournament director for the United States Chess Federation, the USCF. In general, the Chicago area has a lot of chess. There's big chess programs in a lot of elementary schools, but Tom Doan is probably single-handedly responsible for half the programs in Evanston and like multiple elementary schools. He was the coach at Haven Middle School when I was there. So by the time I got to high school, I'd been playing serious chess with a coach and learning and training. Like high school ETHS, we were state champions. And if at least one year I was a student, the other three we were in the top 10. So just always a strong competitive chess team. The year we won state, I was on board 4. I went 7-0. So
Wow.
against the fourth best player on everyone else's team, I went undefeated. Maybe if I were on board 3 or 2 or 1, I might not have won all my games, but there were 3 other players at the team who were better than me. So I was a solid board 4 and
A solid number 4.
pulled my weight. So, chess is a beautiful game that I have been playing for almost 30 years now, because I'm 33 now and I started when I was 4. So it's been 29 years of chess. I can play blindfolded. I can play multiple games at the same time. I can play multiple games blindfolded at the same time while playing the violin. You know, it's second nature. I have memorized entire games and have favorite historical games, and um, it's been a respite. It's a beautiful release. It's a nice way to get out aggression if you're feeling like you want to punch someone. Well, the game of chess was invented to prevent a war, um,
Oh, I didn't know
because
that.
there were two kings who, rather than fight things out with their literal troops, they decided to have a metaphorical battle and let it be decided on this game of strategy rather than um, cause a loss of life. So for forever, it's been a mental conquest and sort of a way of channeling any aggression and violent urges. Not that I'm a particularly violent person, but everybody
No.
gets mad sometimes, and it's a good way to get that out.
Yes.
um, and it's come full circle because now this board behind me, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see it in the video.
There is oh, I just knocked over my camera. Wah, wah, wah. There's a cable here that that's probably fine. Just knocked over a camera. There's a cable coming out of the side of this puppy. This is a smart board, and it's
Oh, okay.
designed by a company called DGT. They're a Dutch company. This is what the World Championship matches are played on, because it automatically connects with your computer and can record and document your games. But what I figured out is you could use this as a machine for making music. So
Oh,
I have a software engineer friend of mine who has written some code to turn this into a MIDI controller,
wow. Is
which
that the
means
only one of its kind?
this is the first in the world. This is the chessboard drum machine,
Wow.
and I'm working on it every day now to try and find out what does a game of chess sound like. You know,
Tell me more about that. I'm trying to imagine it, but I don't. So let's say two people play a game. Is it the rhythm of when and how people make moves, or is each square kind of hooked up to a certain sound? Or am I totally off on that?
It's pretty open-ended right now because we're in the early stages, and so theoretically any and all of those things could happen. The very first version of this, and if you go on my YouTube channel, there's a video called A Chessboard That Makes Music, where I sort of demo this. I am using it in a very rudimentary way. It is simply an 8-step, 8-track sequencer. So it's just kind of like, imagine a playhead scrolling from left to right
Oh, okay.
on the
Just
board.
looping.
And each rank has a MIDI channel and is sending out MIDI notes, and they're just on or off, one note per rank, which means you could use it for drums and drum triggering, which is actually kind of why I got this setup in the first place. Was the thing that I don't have in my setup. There is a drum kit behind me, but I don't practice it much, in part because I have neighbors.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's just rude. But it's also potentially interesting to have some automated rhythm generator, kind of electronic drums and groove machines. And I'm interested in that. I'm really interested in groove. I've actually taught a masterclass on groove as well, and I'm going to be running it again at the end of this month. It's called Groove Shop, again with Andy Reiner, andyreiner.com/groove shop. We should have the info up for that by the time this airs, hopefully. So check it out.
Okay. Sweet.
Groove
Yeah.
Shop.
Groove Shop. Okay, cool. We'll put that
Yeah.
link in the show notes as well. So I'm just curious. You mentioned that you can play multiple games. Have you ever done that as sort of have you ever done that as like a gig / event, like just play a bunch of games and do a concert? That sounds
That's
like
the
it would be
dream.
a one of a kind, remarkable event that I would have to invite all my friends to.
That's absolutely the dream. It's what, kind of worked out with reasonably good timing that the world exploded for a year and I could
Right.
sit here and develop this. By the time things open up again, it should be ready to go. The next iteration of this will be not just that simple 8-track sequencer thing. I'm now trying to build in code and sort of software that does more dynamic sequencing, where each piece controls a number of squares. Actually, that's true in the game anyway. When you move a piece out, it now controls more territory.
Oh,
Common
okay.
mistake from beginning chess players is they attack pieces and you go after your opponent's queen, but they could just move the queen. Far more useful, and any landowners and monopoly players know this, you want to control real estate, right?
Right.
You want to control squares. So if you can control the center of the board and make it so your opponent can't move their pieces through there safely, you control the flow of the game. So my idea in terms of really creating a musical instrument that sounds like the game, the next step is to each piece or type of piece. So like the black knights is a track, the white bishops is a track, the white rooks is a track. And so each of those piece categories gets its own MIDI channel. And the number of squares that those pieces can see becomes the MIDI notes. And each square will have a note that it sends, possibly additional things like MIDI CCs, velocity information, gates and triggers and other stuff. I've been researching a lot of Eurorack modular synthesizer stuff, and there's a lot of buzzwords that I don't understand yet, but I'm trying to understand it so that I can turn this thing into a really serious musical instrument that kind of, no matter what it does, it will sound cool, and the sound will be directly mirroring the game. So if one player is really winning, their pieces are going to have a lot more sound going on, you know,
Oh, okay. That is so
ideally.
cool. I can't wait to see more of that as it develops. Chess music. Awesome.
Yes,
I'd
yes.
love to
There's,
I'd love to take it back to your undergrad years and how that sort of sent you on the trajectory to now. So you were doing the double major in math
I
and
was.
violin. Was it sort
That's
of
right.
traditional conservatory violin, or was it the eclectic styles track, or was it that sort of a program?
Well learned. Well learned. It's sort of both. So I went to a school called Denison University, and Denison has um, a it's a liberal arts college. So there's a math program. Everyone's expected to take a certain number of humanities, and I took a philosophy class. I took an economics class. I took a Sojant class. A little bit of science. I remember taking an astronomy class, and but to become a music major, actually, if you were at least a performance certificate minor, your lessons fees were waived. So I was like, I'm
Oh,
definitely at least that.
yeah.
And I thought I'm going to be a math and maybe a computer science major. I quickly discovered I don't enjoy debugging, and yet here I am. So it didn't go to waste, but it wasn't going to be my degree track. The music program, Denison has an orchestra. They also have a couple of jazz teachers, and so I was getting some jazz violin lessons. The department chair at the time was a violinist named Andy Carlson, who's now teaching elsewhere, but he's a bluegrass fiddler. And so
Oh.
there is a bluegrass program at Denison, and they actually have, since I graduated, gotten accredited to offer a degree in bluegrass music.
Oh,
So
cool.
I was learning classical violin technique in my private lessons and playing in the symphony orchestra and taking jazz lessons from Pete Mills as a sax teacher and Tom Carroll was the jazz guitar teacher, and started taking upright bass lessons from Doug Richardson. But that was because they needed a bassist for the bluegrass band. And I
Ah.
was really just interested in Jaco Pastorius and Victor Wooten and bass guitar, started playing bass guitar. And then Doug was teaching me bass guitar and said, Rob, there's an upright at the shop that's a really good deal. And so I bought it. They also needed a mandolin player, so I started playing mandolin and learned a bunch of mandolin stuff. Mandolin is, of course, tuned the same as violin, so there's been a ton of cross pollination as I learn mandolin chords. That turns into more interesting voicings on the violin. And triple stops that might be scary triple stops are like, oh, it's just a little cumbersome because there aren't frets, but I've done that shape before. So multi-instrumentalism kind of started in full at Denison because of the bluegrass program, and because in one band I was singing and playing violin, in another band I was playing mandolin, in the third combo I was playing upright bass. And then I was playing in a band on the weekends called Cattywampus, who is still touring all over the Ohio area, Columbus and Mount Vernon, and that sort of middle of Ohio area, everything from Cleveland down to Cincinnati. And band leader is a big fat guitarist with dreadlocks, Kevin Dredd. And so we played a mixture of bluegrass and reggae music that he calls Bluegrass Tafari, which is pretty outrageous. That was my working gigging experience. Was every Friday and Saturday night I was out making money, but dealing with the hassles of gig life and the scenarios of how do you play music for a crowd. I was learning all these, virtuosic jazz, like crazy notey nonsense that wasn't really useful if you're backing up a singer and they want they're singing this thing and I'm coming and going and Kevin will go, you cut that out, she's singing. He didn't actually say that, but let's say he didn't have a gentle bedside manner on the bandstand as I was actively overplaying and sort of crapping all over the singer. I just had no conception of what my job was in the band. Was a support instrument, but I'm so used to being this hotshot lead solo thing. And so I got a lot of education from just the mix of it all, the rigors of the classical education and working on my solo Isai violin, the Obsession Sonata. And I played in the composer's thing and was writing music and trying to arrange that for Pierrot ensemble and chamber music stuff. And then 3 bluegrass bands and my weekend gigging band, just all of it all the time.
Awesome. You said when you were younger, classical or traditional wasn't really your thing as far as like showing up prepared and all that stuff. How would you say that changed? Like how you're because it sounds like you it sounds like considering you're in college for this now, you probably were showing up prepared now. So how was your thoughts around sort of classical training overlapped with your non-classical stuff?
Well, I went on after Denison to New England Conservatory for there's a program there called Contemporary Improvisation. And, the whole time I've been interested in making my own music and working as a composer and writing my own music. So my focus and the thing that draws me most actively has always been music that has strong rhythmic elements and makes people move. And sometimes that is classical music. I would say Tchaikovsky is a really groovy dude,
He is, yeah.
There's so much. Stravinsky is so groovy. But all of the harmony that I'm learning in the jazz world, I'm interested in how Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley and Stuff Smith is my hero of the violin. But also, so all of these jazz musicians are using these really beautiful dominant chords and diminished chords and whole tone scales and all these beautiful sounds. And then you hear all of that and it's already in Debussy and Ravel and, the French Impressionist composers. And I've been playing as an accompanist for ballet. Again, actually, that was an accident from Denison. The 2 music buildings, there was the music building and then the performance space. In between was Doane Dance Hall. And so I kept walking past the dance building and hearing this. There's this incredible drumming coming out of the dance building. And I was like, we don't have a drum teacher. Who is that? It was Terrence Karn. Terrence is a dance accompanist and invited me to apprentice with him and play for dance classes. So there, I was lured in by the drums, but he was also playing for ballet. And so he was playing piano and accordion and loved having a violin to help these dancers get long flowing lines. So for me as a dance musician, classical music helps me learn about phrasing. The thing that sells me the hardest about Schubert and Schumann and Prokofiev. Well, Prokofiev's pretty dancey, but a lot of these great classical composers is their lines are so beautiful. They've taken time to really work through melody and create a line that just flows naturally, and it follows the curve of the harmony. So always now, my interest in classical music is as a composer who wants to use the tools that previous composers have built. And that's really interesting to me. I do sometimes play in chamber music settings. The last time I played a string quartet on, I think it was actually it was Christmas Eve. Yeah, I played a Christmas Eve mass. And chamber music, all of the stuff I've learned from playing in an orchestra, all of the dynamics and balancing and playing, and just there's something so beautiful about making harmony with other people. So having, even if it was simple Christmas carols, having it as a string quartet with a pianist, oh, amazing. My interest in classical music, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I really love all of the music I've learned so far, and the trajectory of where I've gone as a composer and as a creator means that I don't get to play in orchestras that much, and I'm rarely playing with a band or a chamber ensemble. Most of the time I'm playing my own music solo, possibly using technology to help. That's interesting to me. I want to always mush everything together and to make something new. But I love to play it when I get the chance, which is, whenever.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the overlap there, because I think when we're kids, there's sort of this perception that you're either like all classical or you're all jazz pop, and never shall the two meet. But right. I think there's so much overlap there, and there's so much that one can learn from the other. That I think it was Bill Evans that was originally going to be like a classical pianist, and now he's like one of the most celebrated jazz musicians of all time.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And, so developing the technique and the sense of phrasing and using that to make your own stuff. I love how you articulated that.
And the music is just so good. It's just so undeniably good. Bach is
like the original jazz musician, I think.
There's nothing but, this, you can't write anything better than this. Like, that's so good. It's so good. But he makes people dance too. I've played that for a ballet class, and they move. That's awesome. It's not always square eights, so it's hard for them to count, and I sometimes have to round off the edges and
a little bit of swing.
Well, no, but it might be like. Have to, just because they're the limitations of the movements are they've got 8 counts, so I can't keep playing the over the bar line phrase that Papa Bach came up with.
Right.
I have to fudge it and change it and adjust it and arrange it for the circumstances. But the source material is so rich that you could take just the solo partitas and sonatas and write every other piece of music forever. using only the materials of that. It's just every chord voicing you can think of, Bach has written out for solo violin. They're all there. So many, well, 90% of it. And Yesai found the rest of them. So
Right.
there's so much good stuff there. Yeah. The other thing I'll say is when I was a student at NEC, there was great admiration between and among the departments.
Okay.
So all of the classical musicians, and NEC is one of the top classical conservatories in the world. Everybody there is a monster musician who's can sight read. And one of my dear friends, Yannick Rafalimanana, who has the best last name ever.
Yes.
Yannick would often show up and I watched him sight read the Fauré piano concerto. He sight read that. What?
That's disgusting. Yeah.
Or my buddy Christian Boudou, who would come in and we would have a rager college party at his apartment, and it's just crappy Alston student ghetto dorms, and there's big 30 racks of terrible beer and people puking off the balcony and deciding who they want to kiss for the first time ever, and sort of dumb college nonsense. And then in the middle of the party, someone drunkenly goes, "Everybody shut up, shut up. Everybody shut up. Chris is going to play." And then he's, maybe blackout drunk, but then we'll play all the Chopin preludes in succession. These are insanely good musicians who are so skilled. And those were my peers. So, of course, I'm going to be taking notes and listening to how they play, and getting another student in our CI program, Yasmina Zeiz, incredible Tunisian violinist. She's something of a pop star in Tunis. And I was taking classical lessons from her because, she was a student at the Menuhin School and was a child prodigy and had all these chops. And so my playing was better from just our hanging out, and I can express all of the things in my head much more easily because of that time and the lessons I took with her and the lessons I took with Tanya Kalmanovich, and it all adds up,
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So going through today, as best as you can sum up, especially with most of us being sort of stuck in our artist basements, we'll call it, for the last 14 months, what continues to inspire you today artistically in your work to sort of keep you going again and again and again creating?
Quite a few things, unsurprisingly. This has been the axe that I've been playing the most in quarantine. Just such a beautiful instrument, and guitar has always been the nice perfect harmony spot for me, where you can play it like a drum, you can play it like a melody, you can do full chords on it. When pre-pandemic, I was writing songs and strumming my violin like a guitar and going on the road with a little tiny looper pedal. I would actually do entire tours from Boston all the way down to Miami on the megabus. So I would buy $1 bus ticket from Boston to New York, play a show in New York, buy a $1 bus ticket from New York to Philadelphia, play a show in Philly, buy a $1 bus ticket from Philly to DC, and from DC to Durham, and Durham to Atlanta, and Atlanta, Miami. And you could go up from Atlanta, you could go to Nashville, to Louisville, to Indianapolis, to Chicago. So you can do entire tours on the megabus, and I have. But that means that I could only bring very minimal gear. And in every city, somebody has a piano and somebody has a guitar. So keys is the next journey for 2021. I really need to spend some time getting my piano chops up. I'm terrible. We should talk.
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
It's, I say that I'm going to be a really good pianist by the time I'm 90. is the goal. If I could be an excellent pianist by the time I'm 90, I'll be happy. But more practically, the arranging ideas that I could get from playing two-handed stuff with spread voicings, and I want to get tenths in my left hand so I could play full chords and play melody at the same time. I'm not there yet, and that's a ton of slogging. Andy Reiner has a podcast called The River of Suck,
Yes.
where he talks about you have to suck at something before you can be good at something. So I am thoroughly swimming in the river of suck, playing keys, and any opportunity I can get to either play that or play guitar, I'm practicing. I have like 15 tabs open in a browser right now with keyboard voicings, cool chicken picking Telecaster guitar licks, and jazz arrangement of chord melody for Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and just a bunch of, I'm taking lessons on Patreon. I'm going to Barry Harris jazz workshops every Saturday. He's 91 years old and teaching jazz every Saturday on Zoom, by the way. Wow. Definitely worth checking out if you're into jazz and piano. Barry Harris, amazing pianist. So those are the two instruments that I'm actively trying to go from mediocre to really good at. 2020 was guitar. 2021 is keyboard and synth stuff. Also the sound design element of it. So just changing some sliders on here. Versus completely different sound. So
right.
Piano is one thing. Synth is a whole other beast, and even a different take on that. So trying to learn how synthesis and sound design works, and studying how using oscillators and filters and VCOs and stuff. This is a little tiny monosynth. It's a Moog. And I got this to try and learn how it works, and I've been using it in a rock band that I play in. We're going to be back on the road pretty soon, so I'm excited about that. But the chessboard can control multiple synthesizers simultaneously.
Wow.
And does. So I'm trying to come up with cool sounds and designing sounds that then will pair well with the chessboard. So the chessboard is driving a lot of creative inspiration. I have a bunch of songs that I've written over the past couple of years that I'm in the middle of recording and arranging. Some of my patrons on Patreon have already heard some of that. And this month, actually, May, is my 2-year Patreon anniversary. I've been on Patreon, which is a crowdfunding platform. People basically, if they like all the creative whirlwind stuff that I'm doing and want to support me, that's a website where you can give me a couple bucks a month in exchange for exclusive content, some lesson videos at the higher tiers, and some private live streams and gear demos and reviews, and just a lot of music that I'm writing that maybe isn't something I can easily release under my official artist name. Folk singer-songwriter Rob Flax is different from experimental ambient soundscapes Rob Flax.
Right.
There's so many things that I like that it's hard for people to. So what do you do? Well, yes, just all of it.
Right.
I have an acronym that I use to sort of summarize it, because I'm so interested in all of these things. And as you may be hearing, even one of the things that shouldn't be influencing the rest of the things ends up being part of the process somehow. It all gets roped in some way or another. And the most interesting art, in my mind, is interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary stuff, where you have these multiple skill sets from completely different worlds that don't usually meet. And somebody comes along who studied both and finds all the juicy bits in the middle.
Right.
So I call that COGIAD. COGIAD is spelled COGIAD. If I had animation, I would put it on the screen here. COGIAD. 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 Say it with me now. COGIAD.
COGIAD.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's a cognitive Iliad. It's a mind journey. No, but COGIAD stands for continuous outward growth in all directions.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
it's been way easier to explain what I do by just saying COGIAD.
Yeah,
What do you do?
clearly.
COGIAD. I got to write a song to explain COGIAD. I was working on that this morning. I've got a little bit of lyrics that nobody's heard yet because they're not done yet, but I'll play you a little something of what I had this morning. Let me see if I can pull up the recently closed tabs here, because it would have been, no, it wasn't that one. That one. Yeah, it was that one. So this is a sneak premiere. I've got a big idea, biggest one I've ever had. It's something that I think you'd like to know. That single word, I've got a word to call it. That single word is COGIAD. It means that we all have some time to grow. And that's gonna turn into a song. Sometimes it's easier to explain things with songs and with words.
Yes.
So
yeah, I'm going to use that, COGIAD. I don't think you can say that to somebody and them not ask what that is. So that's a nice natural trailer for creativity and outward stuff. I love just sort of the clear love of learning and trying new things and just being like, I have no idea how to do that, so I'm just going to do it.
That's
and then
right.
In 10 years, you'll be like a pro at it. Or well, for you, it'll probably be more like next week. But
no, you've hit upon something exactly right. And this is the problem with the myth of talent. There's a wonderful book that I would recommend everybody read. It's called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. And the subtitle of it, at least in the edition that I read, was Greatness Isn't Born, It's Grown. Here's how. And he goes into great detail about myelin and how the brain works. He talks about the Polgar experiment and, this Laszlo Polgar, I think was his name. But he set out an ad in the classifieds like, looking for a wife to make world champion chess children. I have never played chess before, would like to make world champion children. And he did. His children are Judith and Susan Polgar, who are like the best female players in the world. And he had no chess experience. So he pretty conclusively showed there that you don't have to be talented to play chess. And similarly, that book has tons of examples of you don't have to be talented. And in fact, talent is mostly a myth.
right.
It's about something that sparks that initial interest, sustained access to quality instruction, and, sort of this convenient melting pot of luck and resources and inspiration.
Right.
And a master teacher and somebody that helps you myelinate properly. It's really important to get a good teacher. So I've been lucky to have a bunch of good teachers, and that means that I'm pretty good at myelinating now, so I can learn things faster. But that doesn't mean I'm talented. That means I'm skilled. That's not innate. That's acquired ability, and anybody can do this.
Right, and that leads to, actually, before I go to my next question, for those at home who have no idea what myelinating is, I know what it is, but
okay.
What would your rendition of that be?
Myelin is the insulator. So all of your neural fibers in your brain, whenever you do a thing, anything, it sends little electrical signals from your brain to the rest of you to say, do this thing. If you raise your arm, well, there were little fibers that fired, and I've raised my arm so many times now that it's really easy. I don't have to think about it, right? But if you want to learn a piece of music, let's say, sing me a little melody, something real quick, and I'll try and figure it out.
How about bum ba bum? Oh wow, still early. Bum ba dum bum bum.
Okay,
not the most interesting melody, but
we'll take that one. So
okay,
bum ba dum bum bum. I'm trying to find that. In my brain, little fibers are firing off, and if I've never attempted that before, I'd have no clue, right? But because I've done that so many times, I know that's here. There it is. It's in D flat. I found the first note was D flat, and then from there, I knew that's a pentatonic up. Da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 5. That's something that I've played enough times. In fact, John Coltrane uses that same melodic idea. Right, right? I've played that a ton. There was a period where I practiced that exact melodic idea over and over again, really, really fast. So that means in my brain, there's little neural fibers that go, oh yeah, fire those ones. Every time you fire it, it insulates the neurons with a piece of myelin. This is the gray matter that makes it easier to fire next time. An electrical signal that has insulation and shielding can travel faster. So you have to actually build physical stuff in your head, and it takes time to build, which is why you need sleep and enough water, because the construction won't work if you don't give your body the resources it needs.
Right.
So, that means that next time it's easier to do. This is a blessing and a curse. Practice makes permanent. If you practice something wrong, you'll get really good at doing it wrong.
Right.
So this is why a master teacher is essential, especially in the earliest stages of your development, because you need somebody to help correct and so that you're myelinating the right thing. There are a few people who are autodidacts who are just so good at self-diagnosing if they're doing something the right way or intending it the right way. But most people, the overwhelming majority, when you start out, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You just there's no way to know, hey, I don't sound good at it. Like my piano technique is bad, and I know it's bad, but I don't know why it's bad. It's probably something about the way I'm using my arms and the weight. And I've seen pianists, I've seen you even talk about, the way you use your hands and the weight of your arms. And that connects to what I've heard violin teachers say about using the muscles in the back. But I haven't actually done the thing to myelinate the feeling of getting the right movements.
Right.
And so until I take lessons with a teacher, it's going to be self-taught and kind of weird. Now, there's a long history of jazz pianists. Thelonious Monk had, his fingers are like, it's like, I don't know if you can see this on the piano, but they're not
Yep.
the curved ergonomic thing. They're these big sort of plunky. But even just demonstrating that, I felt wrist tension. So, that's what myelin's about, is just getting the right fibers insulated the first time. If you ever get to a fork in the road in the forest and there's one very well-traveled path and there's one off into the brush that looks like maybe a deer has gone down it, but there's still like branches and sticks and stuff, and you're not sure which way to go, you're going to probably walk on the well-traveled path. Your brain is the same way. If you've practiced a thing in two different fingerings, you're going to end up defaulting to the one you've done more. And you're never going to get rid of that other path. It's never going to go away. So if you want to fix something, the only way to fix it is to myelinate an alternative pathway more myelinated than the one you're trying to get rid of.
Love that description of myelination. I'm going to use that in my lessons this week. So to wrap up, I want to be mindful of your time. A big part of the podcast is to sort of break the talent myth. Because so often when seeing somebody like yourself, like we've talked about, it's really easy to fall into he's clearly gifted. He's getting some kind of divine whatever, and I could never hope to achieve such creative potential. And we've hit on a lot of this, but if there's a 7, 8, 9-year-old or a parent or just an aspiring musician hearing this and being like, wow, that's really cool. I'd like to be able to do that. What advice might you give that sort of person?
Well, I think I'd say the same thing that I sort of said to myself back in the day, which is keep your options open and keep going. You never know which thing is going to end up being a big part of your life. And skill acquisition is a skill. If you learn to learn, then whatever thing you eventually find is that's my thing, you'll be better at learning it because you've practiced learning. That's very meta. Right?
Yeah, meta learning.
So even the stuff that I don't continue to do much of, my math degree sits somewhat neglected, but every now and then pops back up again. I wrote a fractal hornpipe last year. It's a fiddle tune that literally is a fractal. So you never know exactly where things are going to rear their heads again. And rather than throw that out and say, that's not for me, Maybe it's not for you every day as a full-time profession or career, but it's definitely for you if you find it even remotely interesting. So my advice is, if you find something interesting, do it some more. Keep doing it, whatever that thing is. Follow your interests, because the thing that you are committed to learning about and growing will end up feeding your mind. You'll get stronger, you'll get smarter, you'll get faster, you'll get better at anything else you want to do because you've practiced practicing. The discipline of trying something and failing at it and slogging away and not quite getting it and then working at it and sleeping and practicing some more. The discipline that comes with trying to get better at something that you really want is so worth it and will pay off.
Love all the profound awesomeness there. Thank you so much.
I made stickers that say 7 hugs a day because I think people don't get enough hugs in their life. This has been especially true during a pandemic. So as things open up again, ideally get vaccinated first, please, if you can, just to keep everybody safe and healthy that can be. That's a good patriotic thing to do, is help protect your neighbors and friends. But get your hugs. Give people hugs. I wrote a song about it. I wish that I could send you more than virtual hugs, virtual hugs, virtual hugs. But all that I can send you now is virtual hugs. So I'll try to send you 7 a day. I guess I could send you some heart emojis, heart emojis. Heart emojis? I guess that I could send you some heart emojis and arrange them in a geometric shape. Ooh, how I long to squeeze you, wrap my arms around you tight. Seems like I'm having amnesia. I can't remember what that was like. So I guess that I will send you all my virtual hugs, virtual hugs, virtual hugs. All that I can send you now is virtual hugs. That's all I got. Oh, baby, that's all I got. So I try to send you 7 a day.
Awesome. Wow. So cool. I'm going to have that stuck in my head today as well, along with drinks, clothes, and planets. Thank you so much for this time today. This is such inspirational conversation. Great to hear more of your backstory. So much great, helpful stuff that I'm sure our listeners will thoroughly enjoy. We'll include links in the show notes to pretty much every way that somebody can get in touch with you or follow you in any way, shape, or form. And just thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Mr. Rogers says there's no one else in the whole world just like you, and I like you just the way you are. Thank you for being you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of our listeners. Again, this is South Shore Piano, the official podcast of the South Shore Piano School. I'm your host, Jonathan Roberts, and on this podcast, we talk with students, parents, teachers, and other leaders about exactly how music education and the arts are changing lives every day. If you enjoyed this, do hit the subscribe button on the podcasting app of your choice, or if you're checking out the YouTube channel, do hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you're notified immediately when new episodes are released. We release new episodes every Monday and Friday. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.